Wait,
What?
Jake, you got to start over.
Why do I have to start over?
We're live now. Let's go. Perfect.
Oh.
What you were saying was perfect. Go.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Perfect. Do it perfect again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it would not be a Walk the Talk America Guns Mental Health podcast if we didn't do it clunky in the beginning and or the end of the show. So we are doing it live, doing it organic. Maj is getting his hair did at the salon because he mixed up his schedule, but we're glad he's here anyway. Hello, Maj. How are you?
What's up, y'all? How y'all feeling, man? I would not dare complain, man. I'm breathing. I got 10 fingers and 10 toes. I would not trip.
That's a good place to start, I would say.
Yeah.
And we are glad to have you because sometimes when people get their schedules mixed up, they just reschedule. And you're not. You're pressing through, and we love this peek behind the curtain, so to speak, into your private life.
Yeah.
This is great. I'm excited.
Hey,
this is the best.
You know what's the funny thing about, to jump straight into it, one of the major reasons why so many, like, let's say vets and things don't go to get the mental health research and checkups that they may need is because they know if everything doesn't seem perfect, if everybody isn't okay, if I don't present as perfect, then people may try to take my firearms. People may try to this. People may try to that. And so sometimes you just got to deal with what life hands you and know that we might need some help. It was completely me. I messed up my schedule. That does not give me the opportunity to tap out and not be here for the folks that somebody that'll listen to this podcast will need it, and it'll be right on time for them. So I learned that lesson from Michael Jordan. Used to say that a lot. He would be like, he wouldn't take days off because there's somebody that paid a lot of money to see Michael Jordan play. And I'm not saying Michael Jordan. I'm saying in the sense of, regardless, man, you made that little hiccup. You don't have to be perfect. You know what I mean? We all in this thing together. So I'm going to get my hair done. We're going to talk about some serious issues, and we're going to help people that need to be helped, regardless of, because I'll look beautiful right after this. So it's all good.
You look beautiful during it, too. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah,
Why, thank you. Why, thank you, Jake. I appreciate that.
Hey, it is so good to have you here. It's weird. Jake and I were talking about this, and it was amazing that we haven't had you on before, but I feel like we've done so many things together. I almost felt like you were on the show at one point, but like technically you've never been on this podcast. So I'm really glad that you're here today. So many people know who you are, but I think you need to explain who you are just for the new listeners.
Yeah, I'm Maj. I'm the founder of Black Guns Matter and the Solutionary University. We do basic firearms training all around the country and now all around the world in areas where people just need basic firearms understanding. Solutionary University is our site where we deal with conflict resolution, de-escalation, classes on civics, understanding threat. Basically, I'm a servant. I work for everybody that's watching this podcast. I'm here to make sure that if you have some beginner questions about firearm safety, de-escalation, and anything that's going to make our community safer on any level, I'm the guy. So we created BGM a while ago. We've raised and given away about $750,000 to make these classes, all of our classes, free to all. Because like we were saying earlier, sometimes people just need a little bit of information, a little bit of help, and they're gone. They to the moon after that. So that's who I am. That's what we do. Obviously, guys, if you get any value from this podcast from me, you guys already get value from this podcast. But if you get any value from me today, we just ask that everybody pays it forward and donate towards the work. GiveSendGo.com/solutionary. Every single class that we do is completely free to all because of those voluntary donations. So that's me. That's our mission. And I'm excited to be here.
I want to jump right into a controversial topic because we hardly ever cover controversial topics on this. That's a joke, by the way. Everything we do is controversial. But you said something in there about anything to do to keep people safer, right? To keep communities safer and all that stuff. And I think safe has become one of these watered down words, especially since the lockdowns and the pandemics. Like stay home, stay safe, get a shot, stay safe, wear a mask, stay safe, right? And I think it's become very subjective, or it's always been subjective, and now it's got almost no meaning behind it because everybody uses it. In fact, I just got off the phone with my credit card company because I had some fraud perpetrated, and the guy closed by saying, "Stay safe out there." I'm like, "What? What do you? No, don't." But there's a group of people who believe that firearms actually do the opposite. They make people less safe. And I want to get your opinion on that because I know you've got some really well-formed, really strong opinions about a lot of things. So speak to that if you would.
First, safety is what we do. And safety sometimes gets used as a tool to get people to give away their liberties and their freedoms, right? A good friend, I mean, Mike, y'all know him. Rob Pinkett says safety's third, right? Safety's third in the sense of like, hey, I have the freedom to do this thing. I'm gonna think about it and determine if I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna figure out how I can do it in the most safe and responsible way. So when some people are using the term safe, they're using it to trick you into, oh, this is for your safety. Close your businesses, don't do this, don't do that, so you're safe. Those people are usually trying to control you. As it relates to firearms, you just got to follow the safety rules. Like you got to mess up 2 out of the 4 basic 4 rules to have a negligent discharge, right? So as it relates to the people that think that firearms means unsafe, I think that they have a leg to stand on if they're talking about people that don't understand safe and responsible gun ownership. I think that in opposition to that thought, the areas that have less information as it relates to safe and responsible firearms ownership, those places have more violence and death. So we're working on a tour. I just was on the phone with some folks over at NSSF, and we're doing we're doing like 6 cities, right? And Chicago does not have a gun range in the city limits.
Right.
Detroit, Ron DeEzel actually fought 2 federal cases to make that a thing. So you can actually open a gun range in the Chicago city limits. Nobody's done it yet. Detroit, you cannot have a gun range in the city limits. That's why all of the ranges on the outside, like 8 Mile, 9 Mile, stuff like that. The area, and I use those 2 cities not as a diss to those Americans in them cities, but I use those 2 cities as an example of you have a place where there was historically a limit on safe and responsible ranges where RSOs are there and stuff like that. And you have all of the violent crime. So the argument that more ranges, more safe and responsible ownership leads to more deaths is inaccurate. I think the other stat, and I'll land my plane on it, is they push that 30,000 gun deaths annually, right? They don't tell you that 60% of those are suicides. So if you say and explain it in full, now we have a baseline of where we can work from. We can target that 60% of the death. And that's not necessarily unsafe. That's a person that has maybe a mental issue where they don't feel like they're whole. They feel like something's wrong. Those are just opportunities for us to A, cut down on over half of the firearms related deaths, and B, get over 16, 17,000 people to stay with us. So saying this all to say, we just have to make sure that we're explaining these things robustly, fully, and making ourselves available to the people that want the training. Firearms are a tool, just like a chainsaw. If I don't use the chainsaw safely, I'm Freddie. I'm Jason. I'm chopping people up. That person is unsafe with a tool. So if we can explain that distinction with some data to back it up, and these are historic numbers. This ain't me just pulling it out of the air. If we can explain that to people and give them understanding and walk them through the process of what it means to be a safe and responsible firearms owner, we can destroy that myth in like 2 weeks.
I love that you gave a nice segue in there to the responsibility part. I think words have definitional value, and we lose that when totalitarians try to warp the definition to suit their own purposes and try to control people. And we've seen that quite a bit over the years. Safe is one of them. Racism is another one. Now we've got genocide being warped. Genocide has a legal definition, and people are just throwing it away and using it however they want. But we're trying to define responsible as meaning preventing unauthorized access. If you're a responsible gun owner, you prevent unauthorized access. If you're a safe gun owner, you're following the safety rules. And I really like that you delineated that appropriately. And we have to take those messages into any discussion we have. We got to lay the foundation first. We got to lay the groundwork. We got to agree on definitional values of words and terms. Otherwise, we can't go anywhere. With a slight dogleg left, I do want to get some history on Black Guns Matter and how you formed that and what you saw that I guess served as the impetus to even create such an organization. The name, of course, is clever. And I think I have an idea about where that came from, but it was what, 2015 or 16 you formed that?
16, going into the presidential election, the Trump election, Trump and Clinton. Well, here's the funny part. BGM came about because of actual racism. Like, soon as we want to throw that word away, gun control legit is very, very, very racist. And I use that word very, very sparingly. Certain words have to, like, you got to fit the definition for me. Like, just to call somebody a narcissist because, you know, like, oh, you're literally a Nazi. It's like, bro, I just wanted to wear a red hat and you call me, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're literally a Nazi. Gun control is older than the forming of America. In 1609 in Plymouth and Virginia and those places like that, those early East Coast settlements, one of the first things that they did when they were under the rule of King George was do not let melanated beings, black folks, and indigenous people have firearms. And not even just firearms. They could not be armed. And that is, so when people say, I'm always given I know people overdo it. It's never as good or as bad as we pretend it is, right? Or we think it is, or the media portrays it to be. However, there are some things that are systemic. Gun control, stopping. I mean, I'm talking about before the Bill of Rights, before the Continental Congress, before the convening of the delegates. There were things in place, legislation that was like, absolutely not. They cannot have firearms. And then you fast forward through the colonial periods, Revolutionary War, the founding of America, and it was like, all right, cool. First one, we get to say we want first of the Bill of Rights. Huge shouts to the Federalist Papers and, you know, Alexander Hamilton, Jay, and Jameson, who were just in essence like, no, we have to codify and put these things in here, right? But even the outcomes now, the outcomes of who's not having access to firearms, who is even the information, again, Chicago and Detroit, these were long-standing, I mean, not as far back as the 1600s, but it was, no, you can't have a gun range in these cities. And now it's not necessarily hear me?
You're super glitchy. I think your internet is not great.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can.
Yeah.
Those policies, even if they're not necessarily only limited to one group now, they've expanded as control does. And so seeing that and seeing the outcomes, you know, I don't have to say we don't want you certain groups of people to have firearms, but if the outcomes are still more arrests, more prosecution, more jail time for a supposedly human right protected in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, we still see those outcomes as bad. And that's why we started BGM. The negligence, the people getting unauthorized access to firearms, young people getting access to firearms, not knowing the safety rules, the political just manipulation of telling groups of people, oh, that Second Amendment isn't for you. You know, they didn't mean it for you. It's cap. It's 100% cap. And so our job was to just get that group. When we first started, we said, we're going to make this demographic be the largest new gun buying demographic in America. I said that in 2016. By the time 2019 came around, it happened. We did that with less than $300,000 and just doing a bunch of classes. Even like SHOT Show. I haven't been to SHOT Show in a while, but the way everybody hits me up every year, like, yo, SHOT Show looks more like you now than it ever did. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying that in a good way, not in a negative way. I'm saying that like, yo, it has to be a representation of what America actually looks like. America is a salad. You know what I'm saying? There's some croutons, there's some tomatoes, there's some olives. You know what I'm saying? It's lettuce. It's all of these different things. It's not a melting pot. And these ideals of limited government and freedom and your ability to be able to defend yourself from enemies, foreign and domestic, is something that all Americans need to be a part of. And so that's why we started BGM, because in the middle of everything being called racist, now the things that are actually racist that trample on human rights, as codified in the Bill of Rights, we have to push back against that. And that was our mission initially. We kept going and we keep going, and we're shifting that narrative. But that was in 1,000% the safety component, the negligence, the misinformation, and the political shift that needed to happen in those demographics. 1,000% the reason why we started BGM.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you said that, because for me, as somebody who did not like grow up into firearms, kind of came into it through the nepotism angle, like having to go work for the family.
Yeah.
Growing up in just urban areas like I did, one of the things that I did notice when I first got into the firearms industry, and I think my first SHOT Show was in '98 or '97, and it was just like, yeah, there's no diversity here. And you did start to see that change. And I do credit that a lot to the messaging you have. And sometimes I feel like you gave the industry another like motto or slogan that they didn't necessarily believe. I think more and more people now believe it and they hear it. But like when you were saying like all gun control is racist, right? I'm looking at probably a lot of racist people that were inside the gun community now saying that, right? And there's like an irony there, because I'm just like, wait, where was that before? You know what I mean? But now it's, so I definitely give you your props for that.
We got to just creating force multipliers. They're like, our fates are intertwined, whether you want to accept it or not. Our fates are 1,000%. Like, it doesn't stop at like, oh no, just the blacks, the Asians, and the indigenous people. Power and corruption and tyranny will continue to expand. And so when I hear it now, people are like, oh, gun control isn't racist. White people got to fill out 4473s. I give them a very crude example. I say, okay, if I was a rapist and I started out going, you know what? Only raping white chicks. This is a gruesome example. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just definitely going to just rape white chicks. And then after 10 years of raping white women, I start to say, you know what? I think I'm going to rape Asians now too. And then go, you know what? I think it's time for the black chicks to get, the same offensive disrespect to their life. Just because I included more people in it, doesn't change what my original intent and the same outcome is. And it doesn't change the fact that it's a violation of those women's human rights and men, right? Because I might be the dude just raping whatever. My point in saying that is, if you look at the Constitution, if you look at what it was, the anti-gun movement was created for and what it was started, and now when you fast forward and look at the same outcomes, I don't need to say, oh, well, it's only this group of people I'm really trying to get at. If I'm still getting at that group and I just include more groups in the anti-human rights actions, the outcome is still horrible. And so getting those guys, a lot of them, over time, and I've had massive arguments with a lot of those dudes initially. But then when they step back and I go, read this book, read Negroes in the Gun, read The Deacons for Defense, read this, read We Will Shoot Back. When you say to that and they go, oh, if they're objective, then they go, damn. Then, you initially it's the ridicule. And then after the ridicule, it's the like, oh, this actually makes sense. I don't need them to give me, not you, Mike. Thank you for that. I want to be clear on that. Thank you for giving me those props and those flowers. But those guys, I just need them to be force multipliers. I just need them to repeat what I'm saying. No different than when we do the work that we do in urban America. I just need that demographic to now vote differently as it relates to, are you voting for somebody that's going to be a public servant, that's going to be in alignment with you and your family having the means to defend yourself? And I don't care if they go, I got this from Maj. I'm really great at giving ideas to people. I'm a point guard. I just got to dish the rock. I don't even have to score for us to win, right? And so now looking at SHOT Show, I think I'm going to go this year, looking at SHOT Show, looking at these different spaces, looking at even now with BLM, which I took over too, is the Black Libertarian movement, making the demographic go, I think we should be libertarians. I may or may not be kicking it with Trump in a couple of weeks. You never know. But my point in saying that is we have to consistently be force multipliers and dish the rock. And if you continue to do that, the rest of the team will get on board. And that's what you're saying, to your point of people now repeating that, going, gun control is racist, because our fates are intertwined. You will not have a pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment America if you do not get urban demographics involved. You are going to lose. It's not even a question. $13 billion was just earmarked in September from the Biden administration to the gun, what is it? I forget the name of the policy, but $13 billion to disseminate across the country to hire and elect anti-gun politicians around the country. 13 billion. They just let out 750 million of that for the Extreme Risk Protection Office, which means they can't win by we're going to outlaw it, but they're going to give resources to candidates across the country that get hired under that agenda to push for extreme risk protection orders, or i.e. red flag laws. So I don't have to take the time for people to go, you know what, Maj, years ago you were right. Just repeat what I'm saying if you find it to be true, and then be that force multiplier.
Rarely do we get somebody, anybody, anywhere, let alone in front of us on a podcast, who has a platform like yours and as articulate as you are and as passionate as you are, being transparent about their motivations, right? Usually it's like somebody behind a screen pulling levers, hoping that certain things happen, and, you know, the dark money campaigns and all that stuff. And then we just see the results and go, how the heck did this happen? Like, all of a sudden kids are taking over college campuses and protesting the war halfway across the world, and they don't even know what they're talking about when a microphone's shoved in their face, right? You're very clear on, no, I want you to take this stuff. I want you to parrot what I'm saying. I want you to understand why you're saying it, not just like regurgitating without knowledge, right? But I'm seeing this Venn diagram overlap of like BGM, solutionary, mental health, firearms, and we don't care either. We're pretty egoless when it comes to picking up our messaging. And we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, different organizations doing the training on firearms culture. They don't do it quite as well because they don't ask the firearms community to participate, but they're doing it, right? And they're saying, hey, we need to pay attention to gun suicides, not just all other homicides and negative gun outcomes, right? So it's like it's happening, and it's cool to say that and all that stuff, but it's really frustrating when the message gets tweaked, or it's repeated inappropriately, and or people take up their camps and they root themselves in something that's not the mission and the philosophy, but rather team A or team B. And I know, because I've followed you for a long time, and we haven't talked in age. Actually, we haven't talked since like 2019 at GRPC, but I know that you're as frustrated by the two-party system as anybody. And so you say vote, right? And you vote for the candidates who are going to be pro-liberty, pro-freedom, pro-civil rights. And I'm struggling because, as I'm a registered nonpartisan, I'm frustrated because I can't find those people in Team A and Team B, because they all seem to have their own agendas that are hidden behind the curtain, pulling their own levers, sometimes for their own benefit and their own gain, sometimes for their funders. How do you talk to people about responsible voting, candidate selection, policy advocacy, when it's so hard to filter through the bullshit, when there's just like this competition, tug of war in the two-party system? It's like, yeah, libertarianism is awesome because it benefits literally everybody, but not everybody's on board with it, because what they have to give up is control. So how do you teach people to do this? How do you do it yourself?
Find the blue ocean. Y'all swimming in red waters. There's too many sharks, and the bait is already eaten, and they fighting over the same bait. I find blue oceans. I just go to the hood. Everybody, when I started BGM, was like, don't do classes in anti-gun city. And I was like, that's exactly why I'm going.
That's where you should go, yeah.
Right. That demographic is going to listen to me. One, like in Philly, come on, bro. Like my commitment, and everybody know what it is with me here. And that translates, right? And I just explain the information. And then I figure out ways. When I found out that the phrase or the symbol in Japanese for crisis and opportunity is the same symbol, every time there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. So I just go, oh, somebody did the whole duopoly thing and explained it wrong. Great. Oh, they're right here, but here's how you add on to that. And I actually I go like, yo, there's moral things that I disagree with that people do, but I go, they still American. Like the protesters, right? I look at a lot of the protesters, and I see every 4 years, it's without clockwork, right? Everybody getting mad. And I'm like, oh, I look at them like Americans that are dumb babies. I just go, like, you wouldn't yell at a dumb baby for like taking a fork and putting it in a receptacle. You'd be like, oh, get that baby away from the fork, silly baby. But you wouldn't go, you're a moron. You wouldn't say you're a moron. So I just go, man, these students that are fighting for Palestine, if it's not dark money students, right? If it's not Soros funded, I just go, you guys want to thirst for the American concept of protest. America was built on protest. You just don't know where you should be fighting for. And when I redirect that person in that crisis, I direct them into an opportunity. And I accept the fact that they have the freedom, liberty dictates, they have the freedom to be a dumb baby. They a dumb baby and they don't know anything. So I just go, I have to make sure that I'm giving this baby the right information. And because it's an adult dumb baby, I have to accept that they have the adult freedom to not do none of this stuff that I'm telling them. You know what I'm saying? I've told countless people, you shouldn't do that. Do it this way. I've told countless people, I don't care. I'm not arguing against transgender people. Do you got a gun? If you think that you might get bashed because you're transgender and you're advocating for anti-gun policy, you're advocating for a hate crime towards you. Armed gays don't get bashed. I just find those common grounds in the crisis and explain the opportunity for them, knowing that they're not going to give me the credit, but they're going to be a force multiplier in the room that they go into next. They're going to say exactly what I told them if they're smart later. And when they do it, it makes the fight easier for me. I cannot win. We cannot win individually. Democrats are very good at collectivism. And there's a benefit to that. If you ever go to Japan, Japan is like spotless. Like Tokyo's spotless, but they don't have no freedom, right? So it's the balance between that. So getting them to think collectively by giving them individual thoughts because they're dumb adult babies while not calling them dumb adult babies. That is the balance. And the way that you maintain the balance is going, I can't be mad at them for protest or even violence. I don't advocate for violence, but I'm very good at it. However, America was built on protest, boycott, violence, and destruction of property. That's what happened to make America. Totally. So they're exercising their dumb baby freedoms and being an American. They just need better information. So I just give them the information and just don't judge them. Just go, yeah, man, that's kind of crazy. I'm not going. I hope you're safe over there. You got a gun? Because you know the people shoot up. You ever heard of Kent State? And I explain that to them and then put some fear in them and go, hey, man, some people may disagree with you. Even my Jewish homies. I'm like, bro, you aren't like the Jewish evil secret society person. You my man. You just had a beer with me. Right? So I go like, bro, are you armed? That's a crisis. There's a lot of ignorance and you're Jewish. And then I direct them to the Pew Pew Jew. I might not be able to keep Shabbat with you. Right? I can explain certain cultural things, but then I just dish the rock to somebody else. Do not judge them. They are exercising American principles, even though they're dumb babies.
Yeah, you're now going to be, this is the headline, Maj thinks everyone's a dumb baby, right? Because, no, and this is one
dumb
of the things.
Dumb adult baby, Mike.
Dumb adult
babies.
I feel, I've always felt like you're very misunderstood because you don't hold back. You'll say something. But me and you have had, I've been around you where you've been in debates with people that completely disagree with you. I've been around you when you're in a debate with someone that is like on the team, right? Like a good friend. And I always feel like, man, I wish people had the opportunity, especially ones that may talk a little negative about you, to actually sit with you in person, right? Because I always feel like you're misunderstood. And I always feel, because I've watched you do it, I've watched you take in information that you've disagreed with and been, it's a civil conversation. I mean, geez, me, you and Rob have sat around a table before and that's like an explosion waiting to happen, right? Like, how do you, I guess you have thick skin, man, because like, I know you're going to get attention, but you're not afraid to say something. I guess, how do you navigate that, knowing that, like, damn, I'm gonna piss off a lot of people by saying this, but I still want to connect to them?
People respond to the truth. Remember when Trump was running in 2016 and he was in Detroit and he said, and this is not an advocacy of Trump, I just think he's good at PR, right? Remember when he was in Detroit and he was like, listen, you got no jobs. You go outside, you get shot. Outside your house, you get shot. A vote for me, what have you got to lose? And everybody in the hood was like, I feel that. The truth is, if you do have a conversation with me, you know that I'm speaking from a place of empathy and love. And I'm doing it because, bro, America could not be here anymore. We are literally in World War III. People just don't call it that. There's several proxy wars going, like Yemen for 20 years. We was never out of Yemen. Syria, right? They definitely, that 65 billion that they just sent, the last 65 billion Congress approved, right? 95. 61 of it is going to Ukraine. A big chunk is going to Israel, and another 8 billion is going to this thing called the Indo-Pacific Security. That's Taiwan. That's because we want to get the semiconductors. We want to kind of go China into a thing. So you're fighting. You're in Yemen. You're in Syria. You're still poking at North Korea. You're still poking at China, and you're still bothering Putin in Ukraine when he's literally on global stages saying, "I don't want to nuke y'all, but I will." Literally, but that never makes it to the hood. He literally said it. We are fighting 5 to 7 proxy wars. That is the literal definition of world wars. Just because Congress don't call it that way, because they have to get 2/3 of Congress to legitimately do it, we're in it. So the squabble that I would have with somebody when I know that I'm right, not because I think I'm right, but because I've tested what I'm talking about, right? Me squabbling with them about something, is this going to stop? Do you know how many people died in the last World War II? 75 million. It's only, 300 million people in America that we know of, right? If the census is right. So a third of Americans died, that number, in the last World War. I don't have time. I need to convince you, or at best, not bother you and anger you, and to the point where I'm making you feel upset with the truth. You can be mad at me in the moment, and then we're gonna go get a beer because we're on the same team, right? If you are anti-gun, I have the tools to make you see that that's not real. You're not anti-gun. Because if you say, I'm anti-gun, I go, okay, I didn't know that you trusted the government like that. And they go, what do you mean? I was like, I'm just saying you trust the government more than me, bro. Like, you said you're anti-gun, right? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, oh, so you mean like cops and military shouldn't have guns too? And then they go, no, just the cops and the government. And I go, well, wait, bro, didn't you just say the cops are systemically racist? So you trust them more than I do, and I wish I could get to that space. This is about a game of tactics for me. This is not a game of like, I have to prove to you that I win. This is a game of actually moving the ball forward. Me arguing and fighting somebody. I'll say this before. I was publicly aggressive towards Noir years ago because I thought he was taking my ideas. What I didn't know was he had a relationship and a job, and he worked at the time for Ackerman McQueen. And that's one of the things that was a tactical error, right? Not that he's already under enough pressure. My point in saying that is I learned from that mistake. So, and I say mistake by just not as smart of a tactical move. So when people say these things about me, I know that they don't know me. I know that they never had like food with me and sat down and really, no, I'm far too sharp and like far too care about America for me to, you have really sat down with me. I never turn my tactical thinking off. It's not going to happen. So I just navigate that by, if you do this wrong, Maj, you're just taking a step backwards and you're making it more difficult for America to actually exist. The people that are paying Joe Biden, who is he's weekend at Bernie's, he's not there. The people that are paying him have a vested interest in us being divided. And I can't let that happen based on my engagement with humans. I cannot let that happen. I can't let them win. I am a problem. I am a serious, wait until I get 10 million in cash. I am a serious problem. We have to make more force multipliers so more and more people are applying the same logic and the tactical approach that I am. So I don't really trip about it. Like, man, people have been lying on everybody that's watching this podcast. If you're a guy, if you're a girl, people have been lying on you when you was in your mama's womb. They said you was going to be a boy, you came out to be a girl. They said you was going to be a girl, and you came out to be a boy. Get used to it. You know what I'm saying? I just tactically, I can't give the ops no room. And they do that by division. So I can't add to their wins. You're not going to get a win on me. It's just not fucking going to happen.
I want to draw a parallel here because you and I have a lot of similarities. You're doing something very iconoclastic in your realm, and I think I don't have the following you do. I don't have the platform, but in my circle, I'm doing something similar where I'm not just towing the line of orthodoxy in the mental health profession, and I get a lot of the same blowback, but my people aren't nearly as catty. And so that I don't have the following, so I don't get the comments on social media. There are a few, but same type of intentionality, same type of forward thinking, same type of well-formed opinions. You don't speak without actually thinking something through first. And I see these parallels, and I'm trying to figure out here how. I get two questions. One's a how question, the other is a do you ever question. And the how question is, how do you balance your confidence with having a healthy enough ego to say, I just want force multipliers. I don't need the credit, right? That seems very contradictory in today's culture. It's like it's an either or. You're super humble and meek and you don't speak up, or you're a bombastic narcissist, right? And you do both very well. And I think I try to do that very well, but I'm often misinterpreted for it. And then I come off as narcissistic because that's what people want to project onto me, and they do the same thing to you. So that's the how question. How do you balance that, and how do you check yourself? And the follow-up is, do you ever get nihilistically black-pilled because it just seems like you're shouting into the void or battling a wave that's never going to turn?
I'll go backwards with the black pill one first. No. Okay. I can't give my ops.
I do. I get frustrated sometimes. Right. I'm like, I'm not making an impact.
I just start thinking, I am never going to give my opposition that emotional win. I am here to fuck your life up if you my ops forever. Forever. I enjoy doing this freedom and liberty shit. There is nothing. I like breaking the spirit of people that would try to break the spirit of others. I enjoy it. And I'm never, ever. You can win if you can, like when you in war, like in Vietnam, the American government used to fly leaflets over top of Vietnam and drop them. And they thought it might be food or supplies, but it was like messages. It's like, we're going to kill you. We could have dropped the bomb on you right now. That's demoralizing. I don't get demoralized because I take a break. I'll go to Miami, right? I'll sneak out. I'll go somewhere. I'll go last September, October. I was in Miami for 2 months learning how to grow food in Miami, riding a bike everywhere, right? In my RV and riding to the beach. So there's too much joy that is not given to us by those people. So I don't ever get blackpilled that way. I can't even pronounce nihilistic right. It just don't even pause. It don't even sound right coming out my mouth, right? And as far as like, how do I strike that balance? I just look at all of the great people, right? Kobe Bryant, God bless the dead, man. He didn't get great until he taught the other players. Like Pau Gasol would have never been an all-star if not for Kobe Bryant, right? It's just he showed them how to see the floor the way that he saw the floor. And that's right. The difference between great team players and great individual players. James Harden might be one of the greatest individual scorers we have ever seen. He will never win a championship ring. He won't. Allen Iverson is a giant, and he's only like 5'11", 6 feet. He never won a ring. Charles Barkley never won a ring. The people that can take their skill set, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, let's use those three, and can get other people to see the floor the way that they see the floor and buy in, those people create dynasties. They make force multipliers. So my confidence is based on my competence. I did the reps. I've done this. I've traveled around the country 8, 9 times at this point, right? People tried to kill me 3 times. So like, I'm not tripping about a gunfight. So at worst, it turns into a gunfight. I'm good at avoiding gunfights. Everything else after a certain level of people trying to kill you is just like loud music at best. And if you know you're right and your confidence level is up because of your competency, you've done the work. And then you have to, maybe not on X, right? Because it's, limitations and you can't feel the context of how somebody's talking. But I always couch it in empathy. Like we are all gun owners. We all walk around with guns everywhere, right? Everywhere. We all running around with guns. My phone just went to 10%. We all walking around with guns. We have to be the adults in the room all the time. So I just lead with empathy. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I don't want no trouble. I don't want no trouble. I don't. For you in real life, I'm a humble myself because I can always identify where that problem is probably because of something that the state created. And if the state created, or the psyops, and if they created that, then this person isn't even operating in their own mind. So why would I get upset with them? And I understand that society makes people that are confident and speak well, they think you're trying to pull a fast one on them, or they think that you're arrogant, and I'm not. Another reason, lastly, why I'm not arrogant that way, I can be an asshole at times. However, I just train with high level people that smoke me all the time and everything. I was shooting a while ago with Daniel Horner in the SIG team. They smoked me. Live with that. Live with that and go, yeah, you're great. That's cool. You're doing all this work. But Daniel Horner and them smoked you. I train, I've met some of my idols, CT Fletcher. CT Fletcher respects me. That's the voice in my head. Right. So am I doing things that will make my legends proud? Am I being a team player? Am I doing all of that? I just balance it with that. And then I go show up to the world. And then after a while, when I say we're gonna do this, I'm gonna get an RV to travel around in the RV. We do it. We're gonna make the gun demographic in the urban community. It's gonna be the largest gun buying demographic in America. We did it with only 300K at the time. So as far as the people that get me misconstrued, to Mike's point, they never really sat with me. You know what I mean? And I understand what media does. I understand it. And so I just go all right, cool. And bro, I don't have 10 million in cash yet. So there'll be a different level of arrogance that I'll struggle with at 10 million in cash, or 8 in Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? Until then, bro, you're fine. You're fine. Just keep working. You know what I mean?
You got a charger there? Can you borrow a charger? Because I don't want to kill this in the next 3 minutes.
No, I don't.
Well, if
no,
you got to come back.
Look, that's what I was gonna say. Look, let's end it. Let's end it here, and then let's do a part 2.
Okay. Because
I got a lot. There's a lot of
acronym too.
Yeah, I have a bunch of stories. A lot of it's comedy. We have a long history together, going back.
Hey, bro, you gonna look, Mike? You gonna be in Vegas, July the 10th through the 13th.
Yes.
Bro, I'm there for that whole week. Freedom Fest again.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get
together. Let's get a Walk the Talk America booth at Freedom Fest. Just text me after this, because that needs to happen. All right.
I know a guy who only lives 6.5 hours away.
Yeah, Jake, you can come down.
Come through.
Yeah.
I will.
Hell yeah.
Southwest, baby.
That's my birthday week.
Perfect flight.
Come through.
No, but seriously, I want to have you back on, because there's a few things. Not only do I want to tell some of the best anecdotal stories that we have together, but what you've done for Walk the Talk America, I can't tell you, man, it's so many good memories. The very first time I talked about Walk Talk America was in your presence, right? And I had no idea what I was doing back then, and it wasn't a thing. It was in Denver. But just even the Vice debates, you bringing up Walk the Talk America during that time, and just me not knowing that was going to happen, and then my phone blowing up with 1,000 people going, dude, Maj just brought you up on the Vice debates. You know what I mean? I've always appreciated you and the work you've done. And I think what you have done for the firearms community is the equivalent of what NWA did for hip hop.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
You scared people, but in a good way, right? You made people take notice of this. And when you were walking the floor of the shows with the shirts and everything like that, the way that people were just like, this is dangerous. I like this. I need to get next to this guy, right? It was great to see, and I really appreciate you. I appreciate the work you do, and I think it's made a whole group of people think a certain different way about everything. I mean, I remember the first time you were like, "Why is the money's green? Let's go to the hood with if you're a firearms company or you have products in this industry, why is that money not good?
Right.
Let's go there." Right. So We need to talk about all that. I want to talk about fundraising and the difficulties of that, because I think we share a lot of those same frustrations. So we got to have you on. Like, I don't want to wait though. I want to do it soon.
Let's do it. Let's do it this. I don't care if it's this week. Let's do it this week. Let's double back, and I promise y'all, I'll have like a shave. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be presentable and all that other good stuff. So let's do it 100%. Hey guys, if anybody is listening to this, if you're going through something, I want to end on this. One, you survived. A lot of people have put 2020 and 2021 out of their mind. You survived the biggest world psyop that was designed to kill you. And a lot of people killed themselves and you didn't. So you're here. If you're struggling through something, email me, majtoure@gmail.com. Email me. I'd rather talk to you about your issues than read your obituary. So stay in the fight. That's one. And two, if you got any value from this podcast today, we definitely going to do it again. But donate to the work, guys. We're trying to raise $1,000 today or whenever you guys see this. GiveSingo.com/solutionary. Conflict resolution, de-escalation, basic firearm safety and training is important, and it's your birthright. So we're there, and we could use everybody's support. So thank you, gentlemen, too, for having me on, even in my unkempt and unscheduled appearance. But thank you so much for doing the work that you all do and making sure that people are maintaining that balance. I cannot thank you all enough for that.
Thank you for making the time, even though you're in the barber chair there. That's pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
We'll get you back on.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Absolutely.
All right, buddy.
All right. Peace.
See you. Michael.
Yes.
That was good.
Yes,
and I'm excited that we're going to be doing it again.
We have to. We didn't even get to half the stories, and I got
not even.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. Anything you want to say to wrap here? Yeah,
I just want to remind everyone that, once again, like, Maj is a perfect example. I'm friends with everybody in this world, right? I feel like I don't really have a lot of enemies, and if I do, they're not vocal about it. But Maj is a very misunderstood individual that is really doing a lot of great work. And I'm telling you, if you disagree with Maj's post, maybe don't follow him on social media if it makes you angry, but like, seek him out and talk to him and have these discussions. He'll have these discussions with you. Because I think, like, we're all on the same side when it comes to, 2A rights and freedom. And I hate it. I mean, I'm glad he alluded to the whole Col Noir thing, because at the time I'm good friends with both of them. And I remember when he said that stuff out of wherever he was in the space where he was angry at Noir. And I remember Noir texting me being like, "Bro, what is wrong with your boy?" Right? And I was just literally like, "No, like, you two are fighting? Like, how the hell is that supposed to happen?" And I remember how hurt Noir was, saying, like, I've only tried to support him. Like, why is he going after me? Right? He was a little confused, but I'm still like, him to come back on the show and actually address that, right? That shows growth. That shows, and he admitted it. Like, I was a little out of pocket. So I'm glad we had him on. I'm looking forward to part 2, because I want to get him going on a few topics. But that's how I want to close.
Yeah, I'm going to have to review that quote that he had at the end that I don't think he realized how powerful it was. It's something to the effect of, I'm going to butcher it, but paraphrasing, is like, "I'd rather have a conversation with you than read about your obituary." I think that's really critical to the work that we do. And when we get people on like Trey, Ghost Tactical and Clover Tack, and these guys who really put themselves out there and open themselves up, say, "Hey, reach out to me if you're struggling. Like, if you got nobody else, you don't trust therapists, I get it. Like, I get it. I'm a therapist, and a lot of people I don't trust, right? Talk to somebody, because we'd rather hash it out with you than not have you around." And I think that was that's not a throwaway statement. That's something that we all really truly believe. And the other poignant part that he made is like, it doesn't matter what you're struggling with, you're here. You've survived. You've gone through a lot, and you're still here. And I think that's a really positive message that a lot of people can take away. It touched me, and there are a lot more questions I want to ask him, because he's done so much really good work, and it is really hard work. It's like talking to Maj is like talking to Christian Conti. It's like, Christian doesn't just talk about yield theory and meeting people where they are. He literally goes and meets people where they are in prisons. Like, you want to affect change, You got to go to where the change needs to happen. Maj does that. He goes into the hood and he's like, hey, I'm here to teach you gun safety because nobody else will. Like, that's so powerful. And there's so few people who can legitimately say, I do what I'm trying to preach, right? I am being the change I want to see in the world. That Gandhi quote. It's very rare. And I think probably that is part of what keeps him humble. He doesn't come off as humble. He comes off as very confident and very assertive and very sure of himself. And yet at the same time, he's continually seeking to grow. And I think that's where the misunderstanding happens a lot with, and I'll throw myself in that category too, with people who have well-formed, strong opinions and are loud about them. It's like, oh, you're just arrogant. You're just pushing your whatever you're pushing, right? It's like, yeah, it's because I'm pretty confident about it. And if you got a different opinion, please, I invite it. I want to have my mind changed. The simple fact is, very rarely does that happen because people don't form their own opinions. They just regurgitate what they see or they spit a headline. And I think people like us, we're also very careful not to wade into discussions where we don't have a competency. And Maj mentioned that too. It's like his confidence comes from his competence. I'm not going to wade into a debate about Israel and Gaza. I'm not competent enough to do so. I'm just simply not. I'll watch. I'll continue gleaning information. But I'm not going to wade into that. Plus, my voice isn't going to move the needle on anything anyway. So that's another balance and check of humility, I think, is knowing where you can and cannot effectuate change based on your own level of competence and contribution. So a lot of really good key takeaways just from that short, 45 or 50 minutes we had there. And I'm glad. I'm almost glad it was as punctuated as it was, so we can come back around. It leaves a little space for us to tease the next one.
Yeah, 100%. He's I've always enjoyed talking to Maj. I really have.
He's great.
Like I said, I got all these stories, but he's been there from day one, like literally. Day one. I walked over. The first time I was at an event that Edgar from Guns for Everyone was throwing, and it was on the flyer. I remember it said mental health advocate or something like that, and I was there to attend, and I remember Rob and Maj and everybody was up there talking, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, and here to talk about mental health is Michael Sedini, which is, that is laughable, especially at that time, right? Like I couldn't even fake my way through because I didn't even know what I was doing. But it was really funny because I remember after like sitting with that whole crew, and I'm like, when was the mental health guy going to go? Like, who was that supposed to be? And they're like, it was you because that guy didn't show up.
so funny.
Yeah. And it was just, I'm like, and Rob, I remember Rob goes, yeah, I knew if we told you, you would have said no. So I just put you on the spot. So
well, there's two other guys, Edgar and Rob, who fall into that same category of very self-assured, very confident because they're competent. They have researched very well exactly what comes out of their mouths, and they don't go off half-cocked, usually, right? But they're also willing to receive feedback and change their minds. I mean, Rob's whole PDN is built on the idea that he's taken feedback from the students in the courses to modify the next course so it gets better, right? Like, I think that's great, and I think that more people could stand to do that in their own lives. Like, don't just have a half-cocked opinion. Have a really well-formed opinion that can withstand some scrutiny and some examination.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you your flowers right now. I think you're a perfect example of that. I always tell people all the time, Jake and I, we disagree on so many things, but we're like brothers. We're like friends. So like we sat up at night talking, having discussions about very controversial topics that I don't think people could have those conversations and stay civil and things like that. And we disagree. I mean, we've had disagreements about faith, right? On air, right? When we've had other guests on, and I'm like, I hope you guys are right. And I think that's what's the most upsetting thing about social media is that I think it paints people in a way, and people have the ability to just kind of, throw some insults, there's no like face to face. You don't see somebody smiling if they're saying something, which could make all the world of difference of how it's delivered, right? Or just tone. And I think a lot of it gets lost on there. And I hate it when people get accused of being something they're not, whether that's, that person is racist, or that person is transphobe, or that person's anti-gun, and I mean, it is what it is, and I get it. Like, to have 30,000+ followers, you have to say controversial things, because you're just not going to tweak the algorithms and things like that, and that's why it's never going to be me, right? It's just I don't like to do that. It's just not me. It's not my personality, right? Everything I do is privately. I'll take it up with somebody to their face in a conversation, but you got to take risks sometimes, especially if you want some attention to what you're doing, and he does a good job of that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good conversation to have, because I'm going to disagree that you have to have controversial takes to get a bunch of traction. I think what you have to have are strong takes. But the problem with social media is that because of that dynamic, because you land yourself in a position of acquiring popularity through controversial or powerful takes, that's all that people do, and they don't have to have substance behind it. So you can have a hot take or an unpopular opinion, or just some brash throwaway statement that makes people get their feathers ruffled, and there's no substance behind it. And I think that what Maj does is he's got substance behind it, but to try to put that into an encapsulated format invalidates the substance, because everybody in the sea is doing the same thing, and you can't the average user can't tell whether or not my opinion on whether or not we'll take one that was, this is a great example. Just a couple of weeks ago, I posted something about how at the outset of our show, it's my voice saying mental illness can and should be overcome. We just got to get people to believe that, right? I said something to that same effect on Twitter X, and man, the people came out of the woodwork saying, "How dare I?" Because there's become this undercurrent of folks who identify with their what we would call illnesses, because that's how the DSM and the ICD classify them: ADHD, autism, bipolar disorder. They're considered disorders. They're considered illnesses. If they're illnesses, that means they're abnormal, which means that they can be corrected and overcome. Okay, fine. There's a treatment plan. I get all that. But there's this new emerging trend of people who just anchor themselves on that and say, no. You're misunderstanding me. I'm neurodivergent. It will never change. It's like, well, where'd you get? I can't have this conversation with them on X. I can't ask them, where did you get that idea? From where did you draw the conclusion that your bipolar disorder cannot be overcome? Because to even ask the question begets a defensive response because of the format. It's text only. There's no tone or vocal variance or intonation or smiling or genuine inquisitiveness. It comes off as an attack. So by virtue of the nature of the platform, the way that we interact begets that type of doubling down, and it erodes the confidence that people have to say, all right, you, Jake, will say, have some experience in this field. You probably thought this through. No, because it all comes off as politician, grifter, salesman who's trying to, 7 secrets to financial success. Just subscribe to my channel after watching the 6-minute video, right? Like, we don't know the difference. And I think that's where we get crossways on stuff like that. But it's not that you can't have that you must have a controversial opinion. I think you have to have a strong opinion. The problem is the strong opinions look like controversial opinions. And I think that sucks. I would prefer it not be that way. So we reroute the podcast, which the algorithm doesn't like. It doesn't like you clicking outside of the platform.
Right. Is that so? That opinion that you just had, since we addressed it, because we have talked about that in private as well. Mm-hmm. Like, is that its own show? Is that a topic for its own show? I think it could be.
Yeah.
I think you had a lot of people probably saying, "Wait a second, I'm bipolar. I'll always be bipolar if I don't take my proper medication. If I don't."
It probably should be its own show, because there's a lot packed in there, and I would prefer to have somebody with that opinion show up. In a nutshell, though, so we don't leave people hanging and don't be too mysterious about it, I'm looking at my DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. I've got actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. The 3, the 3R, the 4TR, the 5, and the 5TR. because I'm a nerd and I like to go back and historically look at when things were added or subtracted or whatever. But the DSM, at least in America, is how we classify what's in front of us. Now, there's a guy named Jonathan Shedler, and I'll put the link. We can put the link to the article so everybody can read it. He talks about how psychiatric diagnoses are not diseases, and there's a very distinct difference. We talked about language before and definitional value of language. His article basically says the DSM criteria only describe what you're seeing. They do not attribute causality, meaning you can't tell why something happens. So if somebody's depressed, the clinician should be asking, why are you depressed? Not simply treating the depression. Now, that all being said, there's a set of criteria for every diagnosis. Every diagnosis is known as a disorder. That's the name of the book. And until they change the book or take it out, it's a disorder, meaning it's not ordered, it's not typical, and it has life-interfering problems. That's the definition of a mental disorder. It's clinically significant distress or impairment in important areas of functioning. It's a little bit longer than that, but that's the nutshell. Okay, if you're meeting criteria, you have a disorder. If you're not meeting criteria because you're taking your medication or it's managed, my argument is you don't have the disorder anymore. You don't get to go around saying, I have bipolar disorder if you're managing it well. I absolutely, when I was a child and probably some of my adulthood, had classic ADHD symptomatology. It absolutely interfered with some of my academics, probably some of my professional stuff too, until I learned to control my impulses. That's what ADHD is. It's an impulse control issue. Now, how we get there is not addressed in the DSM. Personally, I would say that it's because I have an overactive brain. I'm smarter than the average bear, and I get bored easily because I think that I master things faster than I actually do. That tends to be pretty common. That or trauma history. Kids can't control their emotions because they were never taught to, because they were in an unsafe environment. It comes out looking like ADHD because they're distracted. They're hyperactive. All right. But once you get to train your brain and train yourself to navigate those situations, you don't have ADHD anymore. You can have the tendencies toward it, but once you realize that you're doing that, you control yourself and you don't act out of impulsivity. You don't become distracted. You do return your attention to whatever's requiring your attention. You don't meet the criteria for ADHD. You don't get to walk around going, I have adult ADHD. I'm ADHD. I am. Because you're in control. Now, I don't understand why people have to identify as that. I don't understand the identity as diagnosis or diagnosis as identity. I truly don't. What I think I understand is that taking it away from somebody leaves them without a sense of knowing what to do. And I think that threatens. So when I say you don't have ADHD once you've accomplished, impulse control or distraction avoidance, you don't have bipolar disorder once you've mastered your emotions and navigated your moods so that they don't swing out of control. I think what happens is it runs counter to a cultural narrative that says you're broken, you can never be fixed, continue staying a victim, because there's social capital in being a victim. And that's a different show unto itself also. Point is, that's what we're facing. And when I say mental illness can and should be overcome, the people who fall into the perpetual victim category go, no, that's not what I was told. Or in the worst case scenario, this gal out of, I think it was Denmark, she's going to take her own life through medical assistance in dying, because some psychiatrist told her that her borderline personality disorder is a permanent fixture in her life. Now, what that tells me is that her borderline personality disorder is so life interfering that it's currently affecting her. My ADHD is not ADHD anymore because it's not affecting me. I can retain, whatever focus for this podcast. I don't have ADHD. I'm not sitting here tapping. Now, I am tapping pens and pencils, but that's one of my coping skills, right? I twirl a tangerine in the mornings when we record on Fridays. But it's not life interfering. I don't meet criteria. I don't have it. Bipolar disorder person doesn't have it if they've got all the safeguards in place. You no longer meet criteria. So I would love to have that conversation with somebody who is stridently rooted in where they are, because I would like to have my mind changed, because I'm operating out of a construct from the DSM that says you have to meet criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D in order to have the name of the diagnosis. If you don't, you don't. But there's people walking around saying, yeah, my schizophrenia is well managed because I'm taking my Seroquel or whatever. All right, then you don't have schizophrenia. you've got a managed condition. It's not a thing anymore. And I think that's just not popular speech. I think it just doesn't happen. So anyway, that's the 5 minute down and dirty.
No, that makes sense. And it to me, because I didn't understand it when you first said it as well. And I remember Laura Burgess from Laura Burgess Marketing.
The marketing, yeah.
Yeah, I remember she was writing something up for us, and she called me, and she was like, "Hey, he just said that." Like, she was confused too. Like, our heads were, you know what I mean? But mind blown moment. And I remember when you explained it to me, and I was just like, man, it's like super empowering. You know, we kind of make fun of the language Nazis, you know, at times, but this is one of those examples where I love that. Like, I love when you can tell someone who's like, "Oh, I'm sick because they told me I'm sick and I'm always going to be like that." And you're just like, nah, like, come on, like you can beat that, you know?
Yeah, it's hope inspiring, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know how many times I've had people literally in the office, and I'm teaching my interns, my students do the same thing, where they're like, "Man, nobody's ever told me that before. I thought I had a death sentence, and I was just, sentenced to therapy for the rest of my life." Why? It's a medical intervention. You wouldn't go to the physical therapist once your muscles are recovered from your broken arm. You wouldn't keep going. You're healed. You're on your way. You know what? I once had a broken arm. Yes, you once did have a broken arm. Now you don't. Move on with life. So until things like, autism spectrum disorder, people do that all the time with autism too. And boy, let me tell you how many people are self-diagnosing with that, by the way. Until they remove that from the DSM, as far as I'm concerned, with my license given to me by the state of Nevada, I have to treat it as a disorder to be treated and overcome. Otherwise, it's something else. If it's a chronic condition in perpetuity, then we have to call it something else. And we have to come up with a whole new model for disease, illness, disorder, whatever it is. It says, okay, you got this thing and it can only merely be managed. Well, now we're talking something that's like a totally different treatment plan. What's the goal then? We know what the problem is. Problem is you're socially awkward or whatever, you fidget, and whatever meets the criteria for autistic spectrum disorder. But what's the goal of treatment? It's not to keep you in treatment in perpetuity. That's the permanent medicalization. It really works well to keep medical practitioners in business, I suppose, but that sounds horribly unethical to me. So I'm just not on board with that, like, no off-ramp to your illness mentality. It doesn't make any sense. And I am probably one of the rare ones who wants to work himself out of a job to get everybody healthy again. And there's psycho-spiritual stuff we could approach with this too, and talk about how, overcoming, there's personal independence, there's autonomy issues, there's liberty issues. So, like, it all folds together. And I think it would make for a really wonderful podcast if we had some diverse opinions, because I do want to be challenged on it. I can be proven wrong. I'm not attached to this. I just haven't yet been, because nobody's presented a cogent argument.
Yeah, and obviously, I don't want to keep us too long here because we're running up against time. But do you ever get somebody from your field to reach out and be like, "I'm glad you said that"? Like, have you, we always point out people who are going to say the negative part about that, like, "Hey, that's not fair." But, do you get people that are like, "Good, somebody said it"?
Yeah, it happens just as often as people say, "Thanks for bridging the gap between gun ownership and mental health care," right? Which is infrequent. And I think it's because we're all closeted, because the overwhelming narrative is deficits based. I mean, even the National Association for Social Work sets the criteria by which social work students are evaluated in their graduate coursework. There's a matrix, a rubric. They have dimensions and capacities for evaluating the students, and most of it's deficits based. It's victim mentality. It's oppressor oppressed. It's questioning how they came to be in life, and just validating and affirming and all this stuff, right? And where I first came across this was, I want to say late 2019. I had a student who was in school. She was doing her practicum internship with us, and it came time for the evaluation. I was the site supervisor, and I was filling out the thing, and I went, "Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense." So I spun it around on her and said, "Hey, take this home and do a self-evaluation first, but tell me what pops to you." I didn't give her any insights at all. She comes back, she goes, "It's all deficits based." I said, "Yeah, and you're supposed to be treating patients with this, right?" She says, yeah. And I said, how does that fit with your solution-focused therapy mentality, your paradigm? Because solution-focused focuses on exceptions to the problems. It focuses on solutions, right, as you might think. She goes, it doesn't fit at all. I said, so tell me how you can be a therapist when these competencies, as decreed by your national association, are what you're supposed to be evaluating yourself on. She goes, I don't think I can. She goes, I got to fight this. I'm going to bring this to the dean. I was like, no. You're going to graduate and then you're going to get your license. And then if you have enough bandwidth and firepower and you want to fight it, there's a tactical way to do that, but it ain't while you're in school. They will fail you for challenging the orthodoxy. And there's the problem, right? The orthodoxy of the national associations, the testing companies, the universities themselves says, do it our way, fall into line and comply. Now, out of that springs young fledgling interns or associates who are under supervision. The supervisors also fall into the orthodoxy because guess who gave them their supervision credential? Those same associations. So it's a good 4 years before a person gets on his or her feet, has an independent license to practice, and then has the bandwidth, separate and apart from their own work and their own family, to go challenge the thing. And then imagine stepping out of that when all you're going to face is the same people who are tied into the system. That's why it's so hard. So I repeatedly say this. I'm blessed enough to have my salary generated by my employees so I can go out and do things like Walk the Talk America, right? And coach Little League and drag fields and all that stuff. One of those is challenging systems. But I'm alone. And who's going to leave their practice to go write articles and blog posts and do podcasts and testimonies to legislatures and, creating, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take policy change and, go, what are you going to go to talk to the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy in Indianapolis and be like, hey, you know what? You guys should really reconsider some of the, no, not when 100% of them are bought in. It's not going to work. So I think that's what's going on. There's a lot of deficits-based mentality that perpetuates the victimhood. And the therapists just fall into line. And if we're fighting a battle, we're fighting it very, very privately in our very, very private spaces. And we dare not step out of line because we'll get whacked. And nobody wants to endure the whacking. So we just don't. We just keep our mouths shut. So it does happen, but it happens on the sly and it happens behind the scenes and not nearly in a volume that would beget change, unfortunately. So what I do, to put a bow on this, I appeal to the market. I appeal to the market demographics of the people seeking care. And I trust that there's an overwhelming majority of people who would rather be told that there's hope for their life, that they're not permanently imprisoned by their psychological ailments, than there aren't. And if you don't want to buy into that, fine. There's another clinic somewhere else in town who's going to just, stroke and pet you and tell you that you're a victim and you're going to stay that way the rest of your life. And there's nothing you can do about it. That ain't me. That's not us. That's not Zephyr Wellness. And that's not a whole bunch of people out there, as it turns out. The tough part is separating ourselves from the herd of therapists who are willing to pick the low-hanging fruit just to keep themselves in business. Strong words, I know, but
Well, and just to tie this back into Maj being on the show today, like there was a
who
Maj when he when he started talking about force multipliers, right? That's something I never really thought of, and I think by what you're doing, you're getting force multipliers, right? You're out there saying it, you're putting it out there. You're saying I'm willing to be challenged, but this just seems like it makes sense. And I think when people think it through and they really want to help themselves or they don't want to be labeled, then they're going to become a force multiplier for what you're, it's like, I don't need you to, sometimes I don't even need the people to understand. I just need them to repeat it. Right. Like I say that all the time, like, especially with the firearms industry. I'm like, we'll get there. We'll get there where you fully understand what we do. But if you could just repeat some of the talking points for me and then pass it back to me or be like, check out Walk Talk America, then we're good. So.
Yeah. And you're doing that too. I'll flip that back around and give you your own flowers. Like, this is what we're doing is we see it rippling across many different interfaces, Bullet Points Project, Colorado Gun Shop Project, Wisconsin, places that we've gone and visited and where we've given talks and trainings, and those people are now picking it up and putting their own flavor on it, and that's good. That's okay. I had a little criticism earlier. It's like you probably should have more, not just gun owners, because there's a difference between a gun owner and Second Amendment advocate, but You should probably have more Second Amendment advocate gun owners contributing to the curricula. But in that stead, I will say most of them are doing a good job of at least broaching the topic and pushing back and saying, you know what, it's not okay that we are uniformly saying the best way to keep people safe in their homes is separate guns and ammo at all times, 100% of the time. And oh, by the way, if you have children, don't even have them, like the American Association of Pediatrics. That's a ridiculous position to take. And I think even they are probably figuring out that they need to soften it, because I saw some stuff earlier. I think they're starting to walk that back a little bit, realizing that that's going over like a fart in church. There's just too many gun owners now across too many demographics to say, yep, the only way and the best way is to do it, this overly rigid way. So we are having that impact. You have led this charge. You are the voice now, creating your own force multipliers in the firearms and mental health nexus. And I'm proud to be a part of that too. So as we're all, giving each other kudos and compliments and perpetuating the love fest, I think you deserve a ton of credit.
No, I appreciate that. I actually have, we got to talk off air, because there's a lot of stuff I want to tell you about that is going on, some very positive things, kind of in the vein of what you're just talking about. But
the VA, the VA wasn't ever allowing its people to show up at SHOT until you made the connection, right? And now they have a booth at SHOT. Like, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, no, it's I appreciate that. It's fun. It's fun to watch, because I remember showing up to the White House thinking, what do I really have to contribute here with all these brilliant people? And it's like some of the things that we came forward with were just so simple that made so much sense, and now have just made such a difference. So it's been fun to watch the journey, and I still love it when just somebody from left field like comes out of nowhere and they're like, yeah, I was talking to this person and they said I needed to talk to you. And then, when you have this meeting with them, and even if you come from two different worlds, you completely disagree, and they're sitting there taking notes and letting me say the things that I need to say, that the things that we believe. And because someone's going to get there, right? You talk about like the pediatricians, like somebody's going to get to those people to pass on this message of gun safety or gun responsibility, right? And I at least need the information to be correct, right? Like whoever beats us, I would love it for WTTA to be that voice for all pediatricians across the United States, where they're running everything by me. But there's probably somebody else, somebody with much deeper pockets, the Everytowns, the Moms Demand Actions, like that most likely will get into those spaces. But if we can keep moving forward, communicating with the other side, because it's like, if you're going to get your messaging in front of more people than I am, I want your messaging to be at least be realistic and correct, right? Because in the end, if you really care about saving lives, you'll be realistic. If you don't, you won't. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I think enough people want to reduce these negative outcomes, and if that person can carry the message, and at least I can give it the thumbs up or thumbs down, I'm going to do it. I'm going to continue to do it. And I think we've done a great job of that. And that's what this is all about, right? It's bridging gaps and passing good, positive information to each other. So I appreciate you and everything. This is uncomfortable for me, because I'm not used to getting the love. We'll give it right back to you. Your dedication to this. It was good to see you today. I'm glad you're getting back into it. And like I said, we need to talk off air, because there's some things coming down that I think you're going to be very excited about, because I know me and you have always talked about, we want to go out and educate. That's the type of travel we want to do. And
it's enjoyable too.
Yeah, there's some opportunity there that I think is going to be really cool. I got to tell you about it. So
that's awesome. And, just to punctuate this, and we'll sign off, is that I'm reflecting on some of the very strong opinions that I have when I present them. I don't ever say, take this because it's the only way. I don't threaten my interns. I don't say, you will do this because I'm your supervisor. I say, here's my opinion. I strongly recommend that you follow this. If you have your own, please offer it, and then we can discuss. I never order people to do things, because that's not in the vein of liberty and autonomy, right? It's present your argument. If it doesn't work, or it's poorly formed, well, the market, in this case my students or my interns, or the people we work with, they'll reject it because it's not good. So in the marketplace of ideas, if ideas are well formed, then they'll stand on their own. They don't need threats. They don't need coercion. They don't need legislative hammers behind them. And if they don't work, well, then they probably do need those things. And that's usually a pretty good tell. It's like, oh, idea is so good, they must be mandated, right? Like, let your ideas go out and have a healthy ego about it so that you can receive feedback and change your mind if necessary. And I think we do a really good job of just neutrally presenting the information with passion, of course, but it's neutral. It's like, hey, take it or leave it. I mean, but if you're going to leave it, please tell me why so that I can moderate my own understanding, because it may require that. And I've changed my mind on a lot of stuff. And I'm proud to have done that. And it's good. So
yeah. So real quick before we sign off, because I want to get to G-Webs, and I want to apologize to everybody in the chat because I'm running. We don't have Kevin today, so it's like I'm getting caught up in the conversation now. I have a new appreciation for Kevin's job. But he asked, do current mental health doctors or clinicians think people can't be cured, or do they just not care if that is the perception?
I can't speak for all practitioners. What I can say is that there's because of all the stuff I just laid out about the academic institutions, the graduate programs, the national associations, the mindset of a deficits-based mentality, meaning you're a victim, you're oppressed, you came through a system of patriarchy that held its thumb on your back, whatever it is, right? Because these things are taught as systemic, meaning the whole system is corrupt, whatever the system may be, your job, your whatever, the world you grew up in, your family, you as an individual are helpless to do anything about it. That's the thematic presentation. It's interesting to me because it flies directly in the face of our 5 ethical precepts. And I'm not going to go into those right now. You can listen to them on a different podcast, or check out the YouTube video on the Zephyr Wellness YouTube channel called Understanding Conflict Through an Ethical Lens. The ethical precepts absolutely speak to a personal agency and an ability to stand up in spite of circumstances. So just like Maj was saying, it's like, you're here, you survived. That's not what academics are teaching to the fledgling therapists. And it started around about the time that I was in my first grad program in 2006 to 2008. And it got a little worse in 2010 when I was there, graduated in late 11, got licensed in 12. And in the last 5 to 7 years, it's gotten way worse, where some institutions, I'm thinking of one in particular, literally say on their website, they're teaching people to be activist clinicians. Part of that activism inherently implies that the patient is subordinate to the clinician who's activating on their behalf. If they weren't subordinate, they would be an independent author of their own life. They wouldn't need the practitioner. That's my position. At some point, you won't need me. I don't want to leverage my power differential over you just because you hired me because I have all this experience and degrees and letters to keep me on board the rest of your life in perpetuity. That's not appropriate at all, and it's highly unethical. We say that in our presentation, actually. If you take our class, you'll see me say that. It's treatment in perpetuity is highly unethical. But that's exactly what's being taught. And it doesn't matter if it's you or somebody else. It's like you just always must be in care, some form or fashion. Medication, talk therapy, whatever it is, right? You're always having to do the thing. And it's like you're white knuckling it through life. And you'll never actually be fully free. Totally in opposition to what I believe. And I think if you find a psychodynamic practitioner, somebody who does psychodynamic approach, a Jungian, a Freudian, even an Adlerian, they talk about psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis as a principle inherently flies in the face of all that victimhood because it says you have personal agency. You are special. You are divine. Buddhism says that. Christianity says that. Judaism says that. Right? Major religions say that. So this postmodernist stuff that's deconstruct. You're a victim. There's nothing you can do about it. Has seeped its way into the practices, and that's what's coming out. So I can't say everybody does it. I can say that the newer you graduated from the university, the higher likelihood that you embody that, unless you got a really good supervisor who spun you around and trained you out of it. So it's unfortunate, and I wish there was a better litmus test to figure that out. Something you may ask is like, do you believe I'll ever overcome this? And if the answer is nope, you're stuck with it the rest of your life, fire that person and move on. Find somebody who does speak hope and invite life into you. Is that good? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So, all right. Well, why don't you bring us home? We'll pick it up.
All right, you're 3/4 of a mile. Call the ball. Roger ball. Thanks everybody for listening. It's always, you know, as much as we like our rants and stuff like that, I can't say this enough. I say it all the time on the Noggin Notes podcast, but it's so incredibly humbling that people take time out of their lives to listen to us. Blows my mind. You're not compelled to be here. You could be doing anything else, and it really is an honor and a special privilege that I don't take lightly, and I know you don't either. That people would listen to what we have to say. It's crazy to me. So thank you. And if you find this valuable, share it around. You know, maybe we should take a page out of Maj's book and say, donate to Walk the Talk America, because we could use funding as well. You know, we do this, you know, out of the goodness of our hearts for the most part, and but spread the word. We're just trying to make Earth better and try to get out of our own way and all that stuff. So thanks to our platinum sponsors. I know that we're undergoing a current fundraising drive right now, a match campaign. It's going really, really well. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see what we can do with our marketing efforts to promote more of this exposure. But as long as we keep producing podcasts and YouTube videos so people can download this stuff and apply it in their own living rooms and workspaces, I think we're going to make a difference. So thank you to everybody, and thanks to Maj. We'll see him again shortly, hopefully, and we wish you all great mental wellness. Bye-bye.